On a bright May morning in 2025, Ibrahim Traoré, president of Burkina Faso, strolled through the elegant corridors of the Waldorf Astoria Hotel in New York. His footsteps echoed softly on the gleaming marble as he gripped his phone, deep in conversation about the upcoming summit of African leaders scheduled for the following week. Inside the cooled halls, the chill of the air conditioning contrasted sharply with the dry heat of Ouagadougou, his home. "Mr. President," called out his diplomatic aide, Marcel Wedriago, approaching briskly with a gold-trimmed envelope. "An invitation just came in from Fox News America First tonight. They're requesting an exclusive sit-down to discuss economic relations between Africa and the U.S. Ibrahim halted, gazing through the vast 47th floor window at the chaotic dance of Fifth Avenue below. Yellow taxis darted between skyscrapers while streams of pedestrians navigated the concrete maze. New York was always in motion, just like the problems waiting for him back home. "Who'll be interviewing me?" he asked, straightening the military beret that had become his signature. "Kash Patel," Marcel answered after glancing at his notes. "Former Trump advisor, now a show host. He's known for his hardline remarks about African governments." Ibrahim's brow furrowed. He was familiar with Patel's style, abrasive, blunt, and unafraid of controversy. Still, he recognized the importance of visibility. This was a rare chance to present the evolving story of his nation. "Tell them yes," he replied, his voice steady. "It's time the world saw what we're becoming." 3 days later, the Fox News studio in Manhattan pulsed with activity. LEDs bathed the set in bold blues and golds. Technicians busied themselves with equipment while the scent of strong coffee blended with the cosmetic scents of the makeup artists. Kash Patel, 45, eyes sharp beneath silvering hair, reviewed his notes in the dressing room. His questions were crafted to probe and provoke. His desk was a sea of papers, reports outlining Burkina Faso's economic woes, security threats, and alleged human rights abuses. "Let's remind these so-called reformers they don't get a free pass just because they wear suits," he said to his producer, Jake Morrison. "I've got material here that'll make headlines." Across the hallway, Ibrahim prepared silently. Dressed in a clean navy suit, his beret still firmly in place, he listened as his advisors reviewed potential flashpoints in the upcoming interview. "Sir, he may try to corner you," Marcel warned. "Stay focused. We're here to highlight progress, not trade insults." Ibrahim nodded once. He had survived coups, crises, and corruption. A TV host wouldn't intimidate him. At 8:45 p.m., the countdown began. Cameras locked in, lights intensified, and across America, viewers leaned in for what would become a fiery exchange. "Good evening, America. I'm Kash Patel, and this is America First Tonight." The opening theme swelled as he grinned at the camera. "Joining us is Ibrahim Traoré, the young leader of Burkina Faso, here to talk partnerships. But can we really trust yet another African president?" The line sliced through the air like a knife. Seated in a deep red chair, Ibrahim held firm, though his hand subtly tensed on the armrest. The studio held its breath, the only sound the soft whirring of studio cameras. "Thank you for the invitation, Mr. Patel," Ibrahim responded in perfect English, calm and assured. "I'm here to discuss tomorrow, not dwell on outdated perceptions." Kash leaned closer, eyes gleaming with intent. "Outdated? Let's talk facts, Mr. Traoré," he said. "Your country ranks among the poorest, suffers from instability, and now you're asking the U.S. for money. Why should Americans believe this time will be any different?" The challenge hung in the air. Ibrahim exhaled deeply, recalling the eager faces of schoolchildren in new classrooms, the patients being treated in the renovated hospitals, the roads opening new paths of opportunity. These weren't dreams, they were reality. Because unlike those who criticize from afar, I act, Ibrahim declared, his voice resonant. "In just 2 years, we've slashed child mortality by 30%, built 200+ schools, and added 50,000 jobs. These are achievements, not empty rhetoric." A ripple of tension moved through the studio. Even the crew sensed that something intense was unfolding. Kash's smile turned razor-sharp. He slowly picked up a sheet of paper, drawing out the moment. "Nice stats," he said coolly. "But let's discuss the real picture." He held up a report. "This comes from several international watchdogs. Allegations of arbitrary arrests, journalist suppression, even extrajudicial killings. What do you say to these claims?" Ibrahim's jaw clenched. The accusations weren't new. Many came from groups with vested interests in chaos and foreign control. His hands trembled faintly, not from fear, but from the sheer weight of injustice. Suppressing his anger, Ibrahim responded, "These accusations are false, concocted by those who fear Africa's advancement." His voice dropped, gaining weight. "While some sit in air-conditioned studios spreading falsehoods, I'm on the front lines risking my life against militants threatening my homeland." Kash let out a sardonic laugh. "Militants or just citizens who oppose your iron grip on power? Let's be real, Ibrahim. You took control through a military overthrow. Does that make you a champion of democracy?" The air grew thick in the studio. Ibrahim leaned forward in his seat, locking eyes with Kash. The audience sensed the rising tension, collectively holding its breath. "Mr. Patel," Ibrahim said slowly, deliberately, "there's a fine line between genuine journalism and political theater, and you, sir, are rapidly crossing it." Then Kash Patel made the critical error that altered everything. Leaning back with smug confidence, a smirk spread across his face. The studio buzzed with a charged energy, cameras zooming in on every twitch and glance. In the control room, Jake Morrison motioned frantically to the crew. He felt it too. The conversation was slipping out of bounds. "You know what your problem is, Ibrahim?" Kash began, disrespectfully dropping the formalities. "You Africans always act like the world owes you. You come begging for aid, yet can't even manage your own clans." The word clans echoed like a slap across the room. Ibrahim's body went still. His eyes narrowed. Some audience members gasped. From the sidelines, Marcel buried his face in his hands. He knew Patel had just shattered an invisible boundary. "Maybe it's time you all stopped playing government and let competent nations handle real business." Kash went on, blind to the storm he'd just invited. "How many coups now? Honestly, it's like watching kids pretend to be grown-ups." An oppressive silence followed. Ibrahim rose to his full 6 feet 2 inches height, a commanding presence under the hot lights. His hands weren't trembling from fear, but from the iron restraint of a man who had endured decades of this exact condescension. "Mr. Patel," he said, voice low but pulsing with gravitas, "you've just perfectly illustrated why your country's influence is fading. It's not because we're incapable, it's because you're ignorant." Realizing he had gone too far, Kash tried to pull back. "Hey, look, I didn't mean." "No," Ibrahim cut in, stepping toward the desk. "You did. And now, you'll listen to what a so-called tribal African has to say." Now just feet from Kash's desk, Ibrahim stood tall. His expression a blend of sorrow, command, and something deeper. The weary strength of a continent sick of being dismissed. "You want to talk about tribes?" he began, his voice ringing through the microphones with crystalline clarity. "Let me tell you about mine. My tribe includes engineers building bridges over rivers you've never heard of, doctors saving lives with tools you would toss aside, teachers instructing children in 4 languages while you struggle to speak without a teleprompter." The room was frozen in awe. Kash opened his mouth to interject, but Ibrahim pressed on, fueled by truth and pride. "My tribe gave the world Wangari Maathai, who planted 30 million trees while your corporations destroyed forests. We gave you Nelson Mandela, who preached peace in a world drowning in revenge. Our scientists pioneered disease treatments while yours manufactured weapons." He stepped even closer to the desk, unwavering. "And here's the difference between you and me, Mr. Patel. When I speak of my people, I do so with reverence and honor. When you speak of yours, it's with fear and resentment." No one in the studio moved. Even the crew stood still, spellbound by the gravity of Ibrahim's words. "For the record," Ibrahim continued, his tone now academic, "in just 2 years, My nation has boosted food production by 40%, cut imports by a quarter, and built the largest solar power reserve in West Africa. Kash Patel, for the first time in his broadcast career, had nothing to say. How many real issues have you solved in the meantime? Ibrahim asked coolly. Besides stirring up controversy on national television. It was then that Ibrahim did something no one had foreseen. He smiled. But this wasn't a mocking smile. Carried something deeper, sorrow. Genuine sorrow. You know what pains me the most, Mr. Patel? Ibrahim's voice dropped, heavy with a grief that even the most skeptical viewer couldn't ignore. That you use a platform that could enlighten millions to spread misinformation that pulls people apart. Kash Patel, momentarily silenced, found his voice and attempted to reclaim the segment. Come on, Ibrahim, you're being overly dramatic. I was simply raising questions people want answers to. That's when it happened. Years of bottled-up frustration with condescending attitudes exploded into action. Ibrahim stepped forward not to threaten, but to assert. It was a movement that carried the weight of generations reclaiming their voice. It was not aggression. It was presence. Dramatic. Ibrahim repeated, his tone sharper now. You call it drama when I defend my people, our legacy, our fight for respect? Then yes, Mr. Patel. I am emotionally invested in our pride. And then came what would later be dubbed the diplomatic slap of the century. He didn't lay a hand on Patel. But when he brought his palm crashing onto the desk, the impact reverberated like a drum of history being struck. Hard. Enough, he boomed, his voice rolling through the studio like a storm. Enough belittling. Enough misinformation. Enough treating African nations as charity cases when we are collaborators, not dependents. The response was instantaneous. Kash Patel recoiled, his composure shattered. The studio audience murmured in stunned disbelief. In the control room, Jake Morrison barked out frantic commands. Cut to break. No, wait. Keep it rolling. But Ibrahim wasn't done. Turning directly to the camera, he spoke not just to a nation, but to a world watching. America, you deserve better. Better journalism, better questions, better truth. And we Africans, deserve respect, not pity. Backstage, pandemonium brewed. Jake Morrison stormed the set, waving for the feed to cut. But it was too late. The moment had already been etched into the live broadcast, spreading across the globe within seconds thanks to social media. Ibrahim stood still, chest heaving, hands trembling. Not from fear, but the sheer force of speaking long-silenced truths. Marcel emerged from the wings, urgency in his voice. Mr. President, we need to leave. Now. He whispered in French, trying to shield him from any fallout. Kash Patel, still shaken, tried to reclaim a shred of authority. Security. I want him out of here. But everyone watching knew there was no threat here. Only a bruised ego and a cracked illusion. You won't need security, Mr. Patel, Ibrahim said coolly, straightening his jacket. I came in peace and I leave in peace. But I leave knowing one thing for sure, your mask has fallen. As Ibrahim and his team exited the building, phones at Fox News rang off the hook. Online, hashtags like hashtag Ibrahim Traoré, hashtag Dignity Africana, and hashtag Kash Patel Exposed trended across platforms. Clips of the clash spread like wildfire. Outside, on the bustling avenue of the Americas, Ibrahim stopped briefly. The early May air was gentle, tinged with the scent of food carts, gasoline, and the pulse of New York itself. Marcel, he said, eyes fixed on the glowing skyline. Get our legal team on standby. I have a feeling Mr. Patel's going to regret tonight. A head of state must not go unchallenged when maligned, said the firm statement. 3 days after tensions first erupted, the offices of Whitman and Associates, perched on the 52nd floor of a gleaming skyscraper in the heart of Wall Street, buzzed with urgency. Sarah Whitman, a highly regarded international attorney, sat intensely focused as she rewatched the program's broadcast, marking each slanderous remark Kash Patel had made with sharp precision. This is a textbook example of aggravated defamation, she said, turning to Ibrahim, who reclined in an elegant Italian leather chair, his gaze fixed on the panoramic view of the Hudson River. Mr. Patel's remarks weren't merely inappropriate. They were intentionally designed to discredit him personally, and in turn, harm the reputation of Burkina Faso. Marcel, seated off to the side, scribbled notes swiftly as Sarah broke down the legal framework, drawing from U.S. precedents involving international dignitaries. Given the worldwide broadcast and its implications, she added, adjusting her glasses, we're looking at reputational damages that could easily reach into the tens of millions. I recommend we file for $90 million, an amount that represents not only moral harm, but also the potential financial fallout affecting future investment in your nation. Ibrahim nodded solemnly. For him, the case wasn't about the payout, it was about principle. For years, African leaders had been the butt of derogatory comments on American television, rarely facing real legal consequences. How often has this happened before, Sarah? Ibrahim asked quietly. More than I care to count, Mr. President, she replied. But never has anyone taken it this far legally. Most prefer to brush it off or issue formal diplomatic responses. You're rewriting the playbook. Meanwhile, 10 miles away, the atmosphere inside Kash Patel's office, a modest workspace in a rundown Queens building, was a storm of anxiety. Kash paced furiously as his lawyer, a round man named Tony Ritchie, tried to downplay the crisis. You've got to relax, Kash, Tony said, tugging at his tie. It was a heated segment. Stuff like this happens in media all the time. Tony, are you blind? Kash shouted, throwing up his hands. Social media's tearing me apart. I've lost 3 sponsors in 2 days. Just then, the phone rang. It was Jake Morrison from Fox News, and what he said drained the color from Kash's face. A week later, the federal courthouse in the Southern District of New York overflowed with global media. Reporters clustered on the granite steps of the grand neoclassical building, camera crews recording every detail of the unprecedented legal showdown. Ibrahim Traoré arrived in a sleek black limousine, dressed in a sharp navy suit with his signature military beret perched on his head. As he exited the vehicle, he was met by a wave of cheering supporters, mostly African immigrants living in the city, who waved placards bearing phrases like, "Honor Africa," and "Respect our leaders." Across the plaza, Kash Patel stepped out of a modest yellow cab, clearly hoping to stay under the radar. His movements were cautious, and he deliberately avoided the cameras aimed his way. Inside the courthouse, Judge Margaret Thompson, a 58-year-old black woman revered for her fairness and firm approach, oversaw the preliminary proceedings. The room buzzed with tension as both legal teams laid out their positions. Sarah Whitman rose, composed and assertive. Her voice rang with conviction. Your Honor, this was not journalism. It was a public display of racism and xenophobia dressed up as inquiry. The defendant exploited his media platform to reinforce outdated colonial narratives, inflicting lasting damage on my client's name, and by extension, on the people of Burkina Faso. Tony Ritchie, his hands slightly trembling, responded in defense. Your Honor, my client is an established journalist who posed reasonable questions about political matters. Reasonable questions? Judge Thompson interjected, flipping through her notes. Mr. Ritchie, I've seen the full footage. Your client referred to the president of an independent nation, and the African people at large, using rhetoric that falls far outside the bounds of credible journalism. The turning point arrived as the judge delivered her decision regarding the defense's request for an injunction. Given the seriousness of the remarks, the broad international viewership, and the documented harm already caused, she declared, I am granting the preliminary injunction. The defendant is barred from making further public statements regarding the plaintiff until a final ruling is issued. But it was her final comment that resonated far beyond the courtroom. This trial is more than a personal dispute. It marks a critical moment in our collective reckoning with how influence is wielded to either dismantle or uphold systemic prejudice. As Ibrahim exited the courthouse, reporters gathered en masse. He addressed them with a brief yet impactful message. This isn't just about me. It's about every African leader mocked, every African child taught to feel ashamed of their heritage, and every soul who believes that dignity transcends borders and skin color. Half a year later, the legal matter was quietly resolved. Kash Patel agreed to a $90 million settlement, the highest ever in a US-based defamation case involving a foreign political figure. More notably, he was required to deliver a public apology during a nationally televised broadcast. Ibrahim donated every dollar to a scholarship initiative designed to promote educational exchanges between African and American universities, transforming a bitter legal battle into a gesture of cross-cultural solidarity. The case of Ibrahim Traoré versus Kash Patel etched itself into history, not merely as a legal milestone, but as a cultural awakening. It signaled that the age of unchecked racism and veiled bigotry on global platforms was coming to a close, and that the dignity of African people was neither up for sale nor subject to debate. In Ouagadougou, Burkina Faso's capital, a statue now stands in memory of that pivotal moment, not to glorify conflict, but to honor the bravery it took to defend human worth. At its base, a simple inscription reads, "When truth meets courage, justice follows."